All right, welcome to Get on the Ark, and we're here today with Jack Stagman, and I'm very grateful that I got to meet Jack. I was on a rugged road trip, and I was driving across the country. I was actually on my way to Baltimore, and I was leaving from Waynesboro, Virginia, and on the way to Baltimore, I decided I wanted to pull off into Winchester, Virginia, just to see what Winchester, Virginia was, and I pulled off and one thing led to another, and I've heard there was an event there in Winchester, and I was invited to stay for it. It was called Wake Up Winchester, and it was in this little farm church. It was outdoors. There was probably like maybe 40 or 50 people there. It was kind of a small, intimate group, and one of the speakers was Jack Stagman, and he spoke about first landing 1607 and how they just done this rededication to the United States, rededicating it, the land to God. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. He's from South Africa. And I'm like, just amazed at this story. And so before I left, I wanted to make sure that I connected with him. So I went and introduced myself, and he gave me his card. And just from talking, we started talking about fishing, and, maybe we could go fishing sometime. I said, hey, next time you're in Jacksonville, let's go. And, that journey has been fantastic. Since then, the amazing thing is, I met you, Jack, and independently, I'd met all these other people, Robert Agee and Donica Hudson and David Barton, and all these people were part of First Landing. I met them independently, but then, meeting you, and it was all like it was all connected. So God has a way of being precise and on time. So welcome to the show. I'm excited to hear your journey and your story. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Darren, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. You're a very dear person to us. And we were just laughing about it just now. When we first met, instead of talking all about the first landing in detail, we were talking about fishing. And we had a wonderful opportunity to come through to Jacksonville a few months ago. And we went out on 3 boats, and then we spent an extra day or two, and we went out fishing with you, and we caught, I can't remember, was it 3 monster fish? They were huge fish. So we had a wonderful time with you. So you're very dear to our heart, and thank you for doing what you're doing. It's very awesome. So, my story goes back quite a few years ago. First of all, my family immigrated from England in 1700. And they didn't immigrate to America, they immigrated to South Africa, to the very tip of South Africa in Cape Town. So our family had been there for 300 years. And our last name, Stagman, if you look at the history of England, the deer are called stag. And the stagmen were hunters of deer. So even when I grew up in South Africa, I was a hunter. I was just like, I was born with a rifle in my hand. So I did a lot of hunting in my younger days, and so I'm 75 now. So anyway, so for many years of my life, I was an entrepreneur. I owned my own engineering and mining supplies business in South Africa. In fact, we were the biggest and largest manufacturers in Africa of mechanical lifting equipment. And so I was in that business for 20 years. And then one day I was listening to the radio, and I heard about a man called Stephen McDowell. He's from the Providence Foundation in Charlottesville, Virginia. And he was coming out with a group of people to talk about God and government. Now, at that point in time, I was a businessman. I wasn't interested in government or politics. I wasn't interested in any of that stuff. Anyway, so I had the impression that I needed to go to this event. Anyway, he wrote a book called Liberating the Nations. And I bought this book, and I must have read that book 10 times. So next to the Bible, that was a book that influenced my life most of all. And it influenced it so much that within 6 months of meeting him and reading his book, I wrote a book myself called God and Government from a South African Perspective. And that became the foundation. And we started to look at where South Africa was going. And of course, in 1993, when I wrote that document, we were coming out of apartheid. And that document was read by many people. And as a result, I became one of the founders of the first Christian political party in South Africa. And so I was head of the Central Committee, which is like a national central committee for about 2 years. And then I let the party on. I think I planted my seed, what I needed to do, and moved on from there. Then in 98, I was ordained as a minister in South Africa. Um, and from there, I think the following year was in 2000, I went on a preaching engagement to the US. We came with two South African pastors. They were both from the Indian community. And I love the Indian community because I love curry. And they eat curry breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So anyway, for 3 months, we traveled the US and we preached probably in several states. And then to come back home, I said to the guys on the plane that I'm sensing that the Lord is calling us as mission in the United States. Well, I got quite a shock when I got home because I told my wife this interesting story, thinking to myself, well, she's going to just love this idea. Imagine immigrating to America. Well, it was a total opposite reaction. Oh my gosh. She said, well, the Lord may have called you, but he hasn't called me and the girls. We're not going. And so after about 2 months, she comes to me and she said, you know what? I can see this thing is really, this bug has bitten you. Why don't you go back to America for a month or two and get yourself right and come back like a normal person? So she sent me back to the States, and I came back 2 months later, and I was like very adamant. This is what the Lord wants us to do. And so she was just as adamant. There's no ways I'm leaving the country. And she was like, she's a Messianic Jew. She's put, and she might be small, but she can pack a punch. No, I'm only joking. But anyway, she had dug her heels, and there was no way she was going to go. So I had this discussion with the Lord, and I said, we have to do this together. If she doesn't agree to it, there's no ways we can do this. I would never do it without her blessing. So the only thing I could think of doing was to go on a 40-day fast. First time I've ever been on a 40-day fast. Never since again. Anyway, at the end of the 40 days, my wife was talking with me and saying, well, did you get insight? Did you get any guidance? And I said, no, absolutely. I've got absolutely nothing. So she was sort of almost mocking me. She said, where did that get you? It got you nowhere. So we went to sleep on the 40th night, and on the 41st day, we wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's a knock at our front door. And I go and open up the door, and there's an African pastor from Zambia. And I hadn't seen him for 5 years. I didn't know where he lived. I had no contact details. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I was in Durban, and I found out where you lived, and I had to come and see you. So I said to him, please come inside. So he said, before I come inside, I've got a message for you. The Lord has called you as a missionary to the United States of America. And you must not be fearful and go, for the Lord has gone before you to prepare the way for you. Well, my wife was on my left-hand side. I looked at her. I saw a jaw drop. And I said, wow, now you've really blown me away. I'd say, inside and get you some breakfast. So my wife had to go to work. Anyway, so she comes home at 5 in the evening, and she's in tears. I mean, she is so distraught. I said, what happened? She said, my boss told me today that he's closing the business down, he's retiring, and in 60 days' time, she does not have any more work. And this was a family that she just loved to work with, and it was close to where we lived, and she just loved. Anyway, she was so upset about this. So it wasn't 10 minutes later, we get another knock on our front door. And at that point in time, we were renting a house. We had sold off our property and we were renting. And the owners of the house said, we're terribly sorry to tell you this, but we've run into financial difficulty and we need to sell this house right away. Would you be able to get out in 60 days? And at the same time, we got an email from a church in Percival, Northern Virginia, which is where we were based. And they said, if you ever want to come out, we have a family that's offered a home for you for a whole year at no cost. There's furniture, everything. anyway, so that was the 41st day. The 42nd day, Sylvia comes to me and she's in tears. She said, "What must we do to go?" She says, with all of these things happening, this is God speaking. And if I have to ignore him, I'm going to be in big trouble. So she said, "Honey, what do we need to do to go to America?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." But so there was a pastor that I'd befriended, Pastor Lyman Eddy. He lives in Leesburg, Northern Virginia. So I called him and he said, "Look, not a problem. Because I was ordained minister," he said, "you should qualify for a religious visa." So the same day, he gave me a letter of employment on the condition that it was a private arrangement that you arrange and you fund yourself. You can collect the funds and put the money through the church. And so he gave me a letter that same day. And on the 43rd day, I walk into the offices of the consulate in Durban. And 48 hours later, I had religious visa for my entire family. And 60 days later, we're gone. And, the interesting thing is, being a businessman, I can make myself, I can go anywhere and get things going. And so I said to my wife, "Honey, you're not going to believe this, but I believe the Lord has really called us and he's gone ahead of us. And if he's gone ahead of us, he's prepared everything and will look after us. Let us take everything that we own, give it away to friends and family." And people think that's ridiculous, but that's what we did. We gave everything away, and we came to the US on, listen to this, April the 1st, April Fool's Day. We arrived in America, 2001. So we arrived, I think we had 2 suitcases each. I had 2 daughters at the time. One was 11 and the other one was 7. And so people wanted to know, well, who's going to send in organization? No, we said, no, we don't send organization. Jesus has sent us here by divine intervention.
Wow.
So anyway, we've been here now 24 years, and we became citizens 5 years ago. And, one of the things I had in mind was to run for Congress, but you have to be a U.S. citizen for 7 years or longer. And so at 70, we've been here 5 years now, so I reckon it's a bit late to do that now. So, but I can still work. I've got a passion for good governance. And for about 15 years, I headed up the Ministerial Association. I founded it. We had a whole board, and I was the go-to person with all the churches in the region. There are very few that actually agreed to work with one another. That was the biggest challenge of all. But anyway, so I worked in that area, so I had a good sense of what had happened to the church and how the church had been largely silenced in America. In fact, I've written about it in a 37-page strategy document. I've incorporated a whole section on what a church into that. Anyway, so in 2014, I started to write something about good governance. So we wrote a document and launched an organization called America Restored. In fact, the website is americarestored.org. And I ran that organization for 2 years and handed it over to a younger group who still run that organization. And then coming up to more recent, I'm sure you've heard about General Flynn's, the awakening conferences that they have all over the country. I think the guy's name is Clay Clark. They're doing an amazing job by waking up the people all over the country. And so I went to one of these events in Virginia Beach 2 years ago. It was July. And one of my buddies during the event, Craig says to me, "Jack, I've got a group of people, about 30, that's going down to First Landing Cross to go and pray. Do you want to come with me?" So I said, "Well, yeah, I'll come and pray. I'll come and pray. But I knew about this land." And so we went down, and while we were down there, Craig asked me to pray over the group, which I did. And in the middle of the prayer, I was arrested. I felt the presence of the Lord in such a significant way. I couldn't understand what was going on, but it was like a great sadness that came over me. So I prayed about this for a week, and a week later, At 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I've got this download. Did I hear anything? No. It was like a download into my spirit, and this was a download. Go back to origin, go back to origin. And I had no idea what that meant. I mean, it was like I'm getting all these things. I don't know what's going on. So I called Craig the following day, and he put me onto a retired vet who knew the history of Virginia Beach. And this is what happened. In 1607, the 29th of April, the first three ships from England arrived to come and dedicate the land of England to God. And they arrived at Cape Henry, which is actually in Virginia Beach. And so the three ships were anchored for 3 days, and they were praying and fasting before they went ashore. They had brought with them a wooden cross, which they were going to plant on the shore at Virginia Beach. And that's exactly what they did. But lo and behold, the pastor, Reverend Robert Hunt, he makes a proclamation, a dedication of covenant on the beach. And 99.9% of Americans do not know this history. And so they came ashore, they dedicated the land to God. They then went back on the boats and they went down the James River. And 3 days later, they arrived at what became Jamestown. So we all know about Jamestown. And of course, we know in 1620, we know about the Mayflower and all what happened there. So I started to do some research, and then suddenly it dawned on me. It was so simple. Going back to origin means, where did the gospel first come into America, where the land was covenanted and dedicated to God? Well, it became evident. That's what we have to do. We have to go back, and of course, we didn't know how to do this. There was my friend John Blake and Craig and myself, and we old guys, and so I wrote a paper on this whole what I'd learned. It was a 25-page document, and then I sent it to a friend of mine in South Africa, who you've actually interviewed him. What is his name? He's just forgotten his name now. Da, da, da. He's a pastor from Cape Town. You interviewed him recently. Sorry, his name's got out of my head. Anyway, so he said, you've got to contact a friend of his called Donica Hudson. And they'd known each other for a good many years. And so I called Donica the next day, and lo and behold, we hit it off. And so I sent her this document. And before we knew it, I mean, we were just a bunch of old guys not knowing anything about social media, how to organize big events like that. I mean, we were really useless. So before we knew it, we had Donica introduced us to Robert and Jamie Agee for Banners for Freedom. Wonderful, wonderful couple. And so next thing, Robert said, well, we need a website for this. And before we knew it, we had a website going. And there were 5 of us, and we worked for 5 months solid. I mean, we really worked hard. And we had an event at Virginia Beach where we had just under 300 people. And we had people like Glenn Beck, who was one of the main speakers, Michelle Bachman, David Barton was there, and a bunch of other really important speakers from all over the country. And so we began to see that this was like the remnant of God coming together. They were coming from all over the country. But the interesting thing is, Donica felt that we needed to have a covenant that dovetailed into what Robert Hunt was saying when he made a covenant. And she wrote a magnificent document, and we basically made the pledge, and we covenanted to rededicate ourselves back to God 417 years after the first dedication. So we felt that spiritually something happened in the heavens. I mean, I don't think any of us really fully understand, but since then, our lives have been turned upside down. I know Robert and Jamie went on a road trip for a couple of months, and we all got involved in different areas. So one of the people that was speaking, Glenn Beck, at the end of his discussion, he said that, we need to work to bring America back and the world, and I've got 12 million listeners. Well, that really challenged me, and over a period of a year, I've consulted with leaders all over the country, and I've put together this document with all the ideas from many people into one document led by the Holy Spirit. And I think we're on draft number 22. That's how many pages. So anyway, we made a decision to launch this organization called Taking America Back. It's in its infancy, and we've just registered a trust, and which will be finished before the end of this month. And we're working on a website to go live in April. And then a few months later, we're planning for a national launch here in Northern Virginia. And so we're meeting new people like every day. I mean, I'm going on podcast. We're talking to new groups. I've got a pilot project going here in Northern Virginia. We've already got 12 of the 20 spheres of influence. And so we did some research and we found out that there are now 20 primary spheres of influence. So in writing the document, we had to recognize a few things. The first thing is America hasn't been taken over in the last few years. It's been decades in the making. And the satanic global elitists have been working for generations to take over not only America, but the world. And so we have to recognize that all areas that we're talking about, whether it be education, agriculture, government, media, I mean, we all recognize today, we have to recognize that it's been infiltrated and taken over. So in talking with General Flynn, he was speaking about it's no good working at a national level or a state level. He said it's like a cancer, and it's basically metastasized to such a degree that we cannot do anything at a national level or at a state level. But let us focus at the local county level. So the vision of Taking America Back is to mobilize 100 million people in the next 10 years at the local level, and for each person to identify which of the 20 primary spheres of influence they are connected with. We will then connect them at a local level so that, for example, if we put out a podcast on education, it'll only go to people that have indicated they are specifically interested and have a passion about education. And so we're at a stage now where we started to write a number of documents, one on education, it's nearly finished. We've got a group that's written a document on the Declaration on the military. It's a one-page document, but it's a wonderful document. And we're working on another one on the medical side. So we were hoping to have 20 documents. What is wrong in that sphere of influence? And what is the biblical way of resolving the matter? And so we're living in exciting times. You know, I think to myself, these 75 years has been a time of preparation. And this is the time that I was born for. And the team that the Lord has brought together to work together, they are the most amazing people, and they've become our family. Like you become part of our family. It's just been amazing how the Lord is bringing his remnant together. And, you know, we've all got our different strengths, and we all got our different lanes to ring. Some of the guys are involved with the vets. Some are involved in media. Some involved in education. And so we want everyone to really has that area that they want to run, and let's release them and come alongside of them, and let's take this country back, because we're at a time where it's the most critical time in all of history, and we don't have long to do it. And so it's a case of hands on deck to save this boat going down, because it's that critical. So we're all dedicating ourselves to helping to save America. And we're looking forward to that website becoming available shortly. So that's a rough. I'm sure you got your questions.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's fascinating the journey and what God does when just in you sharing about coming to America and your wife Sylvia.
Yes.
And how God made the path. I mean, he even made it so obvious with her losing her job and you losing the house you're living in, and everything was just aligned for you. And then the first landing. So the way God brought you to Donica and to Craig and Don Blake and the way he's just aligned all these people has been supernatural. And so after the first landing, and I wasn't there, but I did hear Glenn Beck's speech, and it was, wow, what an amazing speech he gave.
It was.
And then wasn't it right after the event there was like a lightning storm, like right after you read?
That's an interesting part that I actually left out. But there was a tornado immediately after the event. Now, I've only visited Virginia Beach a few times, but all the local people tell us that in their history that they can remember, they've never had a tornado in Virginia Beach. And I understand that it started off there was one local church that we were involved with. It started off at that local church, and it went through the town. It damaged many houses, but nobody was hurt. And it went straight through the cross, which is on the beach. It's not a wooden cross any longer because it obviously was replaced many years ago. There's a concrete cross, but everything around it was destroyed. And this tornado went straight out to sea, and it went right through where the cross was located. So something happened in the heavenlies. I'm not going to explain what it is because I really don't understand it all. But my goodness, that was an amazing thing that the people witnessed. So it was like God was saying, you've rededicated yourselves back to me, and my real desire is I hope President Trump gets elected.
Yeah.
Not that he's a perfect man; he's very imperfect, believe me. But right now, there's no other hope for America, and we would love to see him go and rededicate America back to God at first landing. And that's my hope and my prayer. Whether that comes to true or not, I'm not sure. But we really need some help in this country. Things are very bad. I mean, just look what's happened now with Baltimore. I mean, I heard this morning that 3,200 trucks went over that bridge every day, carrying 25% of America's gas and coal. Now, I don't think people have realized the implication of that. And so it's years to fix. And so all of these things are happening in America. I mean, look at all the people coming across the border. There are millions. I don't know how many. They say 12. There's probably more than 12 million that's coming across. Many of them are young people of a military age. And I've got a sense that something is planned, that we're going to have, they call them black swan events. I think that we're going to see a series of these happen. And we need to prepare ourselves for what is coming, because I think a lot worse is still to come to America. But I'm optimistic that although the evil is increasing, the Lord's goodness is increasing, and He's bringing His people together. And so, I'm optimistic about the future, that we walk hand in hand with Him, and He's directing our direction, He's directing our purposes, and He's bringing us together like never before. So, just meeting you, it's such a blessing.
Yeah.
And just look how you have developed since we met you. You're doing your own podcast, and you're speaking with many people, and I can see it in your face. There's something special about you. So anyway, thank you for all you do, dear friend.
Well, thanks, Jack. And God is just moving. I know what He's doing to me in my life, and I see it in a lot of other people's lives too. And so He's on the throne, and He's in charge, and He's moving His people in a great way. So what was interesting is the way that I met Jeff Sisk, the supernatural encounter that him and I had.
Yes,
and
that's right.
He shared with me that you had done what you had done in South Africa with what you had arranged, like a little, having the forums. Are you happy the direction the country's going? And people filling out what their expertise was, and then you picked a town in America to do the same thing, and you picked Wake Up Winchester, Virginia, which I ended up being at that event and filling out the form. But so tell the audience, or tell people a little bit about how Wake Up Winchester happened.
Okay, so one of the ladies that went to the conference in April last year, she contacted me one day. She said, "There's a bunch of people in Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour from me. Please, can you come and talk with them?" So we set up a meeting the following week, and we all got on like a house on fire. I don't know if that's an expression you use, but we all got on well together. That's the bottom line. So anyway, they said, look, they've got about 60 people that are meeting every Monday, and had been meeting for a year, and they had already a conference that they'd had 2 months prior to me meeting them, and they subsequently had 3 conferences, and on the 6th of April, shortly, they're having their 4th conference, and I'm one of the speakers at that conference. So I've been meeting with that group every Monday at 1:30. He's got a leadership team, and I've been meeting with that group. And I've said to them, we need a pilot project for America. We can't just take this to America. We need to have some place that's working. So we introduced the idea of the 20 spheres of influence. And in fact, Dana was out visiting us today because they've got a radio station in Winchester, and we've actually got one on the retreat center where we live. And he came through to have a look at it. So anyway, so we're working with them. They're a wonderful bunch of people. They're very committed. They're patriots. And they have about 60 to 100 people meeting every Monday night. And they've broken them into the different areas like education and agriculture, the technology side of things. And I think they have a wonderful future. And let's say I'm working with them so that when we have our national launch in a few months' time, that we'll be able to encourage other counties that this is how we do it. And so we would basically showcase what they're doing, and they can say, this is how we did it. And so we're hoping that from that will spring forth many other counties that are wanting to do the same thing. Because, we found out that 74% of Americans, irrespective of whether they are Republicans or Democrats or independents, no matter what their ethnic group, whether they're poor, rich, whether they have faith or no faith, 74% of Americans say that America is headed in the wrong direction. They might not all know what the problem is. Some have an idea, but in their heart, they know that there's something not right with this country. And so those are the people that we want to reach with taking America back. And we say, okay, there's only one way we can do this. We can do this together in a local county. We want you to identify one or more of the 20 spheres of influence that you have a passion for, and let's connect you and give you a voice in your local county. So I think that out of 7 out of 10 people talking in the street, no matter who they are, they will actually agree with you. So I think the opportunity is significant that we will be able to grow this movement that has already started. I think it's going to grow very rapidly.
Yes. It was an amazing, it was an amazing event. I really got a lot out of that event. Not just meeting you, but just all the speakers and learning about I don't know, was it Matt Perna's aunt that was there? If you remember Matt Perna, the young kid that was at the Capitol for January 6th. But it was an amazing event. But a year prior to that, I was in Washington, D.C. for a small event with like 40 people, and David Barton was there. And I got to meet David Barton, and I got a copy of his Founder's Bible at that event. Right. And then I met Jeanette McClellan, who wasn't at the event in Washington, D.C., but I met her because she was just walking by. And so we had this supernatural connection. And so she lives in Winchester, Virginia, and that's who told me about the Wake Up Winchester event. And then I met Amy Schaefer.
Right.
And Amy, who I just met her at that event briefly, she contacted me about you and supporting you. And then she said, oh yeah, by the way, I got someone for your show, and I just started this thing a couple months ago. So, she contributed and gave me a guest already. So it's cool how all these little connections and the way God's working. It's just amazing. I think there's a lot of hope to have.
That is actually talking about Jeanette. She was a lady that went to our first landing event, and she was the lady that connected us with the Winchester event. And she's become a dear friend of ours. I mean, she calls us probably 2 or 3 times a week, and we have these long discussions.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
has
yeah. So the interesting thing is, there's a lot of people that are willing to start working together, And so I found this is what I found is that when you meet people and you have a discussion with them, it's difficult to have a meaningful discussion with people if you really don't know what their passions are. So I've developed a simple idea and say, look, before we start talking, here's a list of 20 areas. What really turns you on? What's your passion in this area? What's your experience? And I did this with a friend I've known for 20 years. And lo and behold, he had the agriculture. I said, I would never have known that you were keen on agriculture. And he's heading up the agricultural side. So once you know where people fit in, it's easier to have a discussion about their passion. Now, I found this out a very easy way. My friend Craig Hutchins, I introduced him to a friend of ours, also a South African, who owned an airline business, a very wealthy guy, lovely guy. And so I connected the two of them on a 3-way call. And guess what they spoke about for 2 hours? They ignored me totally. They spoke about flying because that's their passion. And I started to realize, if we could link people together with their passions. For example, I have a friend of mine, he passed away sadly 3 years ago, but we every year in May and October, we went fishing at Bethany Beach in Delaware. And the guys that went, they're probably 10 to 12. We went every year, twice a year. And what was our passion? We loved to fish together. And what did we speak about? Fishing. And so there was a closely knit group. And so when we came down to your place, and of course we all went out fishing together, and because we all love fishing. So when you get people of like-minded ideas together, they can do more together than alone. That's a very simple principle. So it's no rocket science that we got going here. It's a very simple idea. Connect people in the millions where they have a passion, and let the Holy Spirit do the rest. So we don't have to tell them what to do. We just have to say we have to save America. You work out for your area what you need to do. We're not telling you. We want the Lord to tell you.
Right.
So
Well, thank you for sharing and for being on the podcast, and I really appreciate you, and I love you like a brother, and I'm glad to have you in my family, and I can't wait to go fishing again.
yeah, we hope we can do this one. My brother Cliff keeps on asking me, when are we going fishing again?
Yeah, tough Cliff,
Yeah.
we're ready.
Yeah, we had such a wonderful experience at your place, so we look forward to out fishing you.
So this event in April, is that something that's open to the public?
Oh yes, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, so we're having our second event for First Landing on the 29th of April. We're going to broadcast the invite early next week. But instead of going to Virginia Beach this time around, we found that 99% of people do not know about the history of First Landing. It was never taught to people. So we thought we would take it to the legislators and actually hold it in um, the Richmond Capitol building. So we've got one of the important meeting rooms. It only holds about 125 people, but we reached out to the governor, the lieutenant governor, and so we want to. In fact, he's proclaimed it now a day to remember every year. We've actually got a proclamation from the governor that we need to remember this day every year. So that was a good thing that happened. And so we hope to have as many people as possible. So we're having legislators and community leaders. If you want to come up, I know it's a long way to go, but you'd be welcome to come. And I'll send you the invite, and maybe you can send it out to folk who are interested. And we're also going to have a live stream. So even if you can't attend it, I think it'll be a historical time to watch us on live stream.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. God bless you, and God bless you all those who are watching, and continue to watch and get on the ark and share with your friends. And thank you, Jack, for your time today.
Darren, a real blessing. Thank you so much. Amen.
Yep.
Thank you.
Amen.
Bye bye.